This is the testimony I've never been able to deliver. Never really been able to share with anybody. And I want to explain to you why and all the reasons why. I'm going to be completely honest and down to earth. I've always created a reputation by word of mouth. I was number one in the underground world and most wanted in the Star Chamber inquiry. This is the inquiry where, people known as the Anonymous started the Extinction Rebellion. The Extinction Rebellion moved in the underground world around 1994. And what brought us to this was that we found a truth serum, the most powerful enlightenment drug and truth serum and love drug in the world. It brought down the highest death toll, hair killing and violence and domestic violence in 30 years, in 4 years. It caused the Royal Commission paying out for 23 years and the Stolen Back Generation of Poverty being paid out $250 billion today. The biggest mental health research ever conducted in global history and the biggest DNA study ever done. If you look at the movie Limitless, we developed the drug from a plant called Mayang. It's called bread manna in the Bible that Christ and Moses used. It's on the Sumerian tablets. I was working with two top scientists from NASA who went into the underground world with 5 international networks in Ormeau, Brisbane, Australia. They moved in there in 1980 when they deemed pseudoephedrine to be dangerous. Pseudoephedrine to make amphetamine. The whole world, 80% was on a happy pill. And most people don't believe that. Oh, believe me, they were on a happy pill. 80% of the population was on a happy pill. Hitler created a happy pill of amphetamine, and he was using methamphetamine in his armies. They first created methamphetamine by the kamikaze in 1895. It was the most powerful love drug made from a plant called Mayang. And 84% of people saw it as a love drug and an enlightenment drug, and 16% of people turned evil. That's how they created kamikaze, the most evil suicide squad in the world, who was willing to take their own life to take yours. But this was a truth serum. Hitler created MBK, methylbenzoketone, the most powerful enlightenment drug ever developed that gives you 11 times more superhuman abilities. The original drug comes from a plant called Mayang. This is organic. This is what Christ and Moses used. But they developed a super drug, a superhuman drug, even more powerful. But the original drug made laboratorily correct gives you approximately 7 times more superhuman abilities. What it is, it's only a mind manipulation drug. It actually mimics the sacred secretion that we cannot create. We cannot create the sacred secretion, okay, and we cannot use our sixth sense, our third eye. In 1999, we declared to be crazy. Our parents are crazy because we're being stripped from our sixth sense in the sixth mass extinction for the 6th time. And they knew that many years ago. They couldn't use their sixth sense 100 years ago. The sixth sense is what gives you mental telepathy, ESP, remote you, and telekinesis, levitation, spoon bending, clock winding, folding space and time with deja vu to predict the future and prevent what's going to happen. And you can do every single thing that Christ can, every bloodline, every apostle in that bloodline in the same family tree. Plato wrote 15 books about different families and different bloodlines and different family trees. The Bible explains this about different family trees and different bloodlines. In the Bible, we follow a certain bloodline, a family tree. And most people are oblivious to this, but in the Sumerian tablets, it gives you a very powerful explanation about what they were using to conduct with. Because most people could not use their sixth sense. Only one family tree could. They had a spirituality with supernatural power, okay, divine power to command nature that was so powerful that the others didn't have that kind of power. And the others try to cheat the system with power, light and energy, vibrations and frequencies, and using their consciousness, which is a mental event, a mental process, illusion, imagination, because it's only a mind. That's their 5 senses. Majority of people, like atheism, okay, they evolve with evolution mutation and use artificial intelligence from the tree of knowledge. They live of the tree of knowledge. And they follow that bloodline in the 23rd chromosome. And the 24th is in dormancy. But everybody has a 24th chromosome in dormancy. 98.7% of the population, their body cells can't corrupt children during the daytime, can only be at nighttime. That's their aura in their body cells. ADHD medication has a barcode system, left and right, uppers and downers. It goes into your aura with light, power and energy, okay, and turns you clockwise. When made laboratorily correct, okay, it takes you right out of your mind like you see in the movie Limitless, so you can use 100% of your brain with a vortex of information with sevenfold wisdom and knowledge. That's like a universal language. It gives you multiple perceptions, so you can use all your supernatural power and superhuman abilities. We're born with it. It's genetically in our code, in our DNA. We have a genetic memory and ancestry tools, but when we have amnesia, we don't know how to use them. We can use 100% of our brain, but the world can only use 7 to 15%, the highest IQ people in the world. So they're extremely limited. So that's why the movie is called Limitless. Okay? Keanu Reeves in the movie Matrix documentary represents resurrection. Okay? He thinks outside the cave, as Plato describes in 15 books. Sticks his head through the light at the end of the tunnel. Like when you die, okay? Your personality dies and you go back in your primal state and you control your better from the outside in instead of being trapped inside the mind, right? In psychological behavior and believe in your own truth, manifest your own truth and come to your own conclusion with reason because it's only your mind. You see, consciousness is only a middle event, a process, illusion, imagination. So you're trapped inside your mind, okay, with psychological behavior. But you don't know what you're doing inside your mind like Christ explains for a reason, because you don't. When you think outside the mind, you're 10 times more intelligent. And they don't tell you this because they don't want you to know how intelligent you really are. Look at the movie Limitless. He writes a book overnight that's brilliant, goes down to Wall Street and makes millions of dollars and turns the eyelids on the highest entrepreneurs down on Wall Street with the highest IQ. So just think about what you can do that you cannot do, okay, and how limited you really are. We developed a drug called methamphetamine made from a plant called mayan for the first time in 1994. The first thing that happened with this enlightenment drug, okay, when people go back in the primal state, use 100% of their brain, well, the golems came out, which is called delusional parasitosis, declared in 2003. They're called parasites. Declared worldwide that 98% of people has parasites, known as a hostile entity and spirituality of voices inside your mind that tells you what to do all the time. That's from the sphere of knowledge and from that bloodline. Okay, so we have a hostile entity in our mind, as declared by Jeremy Gibson, 45,000 teachers and 16,000 top scholars in the world. We listen to the wrong voice of mind from the tree of knowledge, from low vibrations, because we live in our mind, the 5 sense world. The 6th sense and above is 27 biofields in the most positive fields. When you live in positive fields and you live by the one yard rule, how to cover life equally and love one another business and flesh, your body cells does the same thing. Okay? They do exactly the same thing and they go clockwise 24 hours a day. A child's a genius and perfectness biology in his aura, in his body cells, clockwise, with genetic memory, and he has ancestry to tools with 130 nucleosome molecules, a genetic repair kit, and 2 molecules mentality. He creates the sacred secretion and uses the third eye with the 6th sense and master the mind in such a way he can mastermind a computer game between 3 and 7 and respond 7 times faster than an adult can. Then he goes to school to be mentally institutionalized into his mind and 5 sense world. And then everything goes anti-clockwise in his biology. The aura starts to die and only works 3.5 hours a night. His sacred secretion dies. He can't use his third eye, 6th sense. Right? Now he becomes like a robot and a homotech. He rocks out of school 18 years old, starts to discredit his parents and be competitive because he goes to school to be a competitive creature, right, and to be artificial, right, and not to use any moral guilt and shame. So he discredits his parents and puts his own 24th chromosome in dormancy and his genetic memory from his ancestry tools because he thinks his parents are dinosaurs as he becomes a homotech transhuman with artificial intelligence, right, and starts to mutate. So he mutates so he can't use the third eye like Bruce Lee can master his mind by 24 and fight 12 year back karate blindfolded and block every punch 7 times faster than one can think critically in their conscious mind with their 5 sense world and their body and face expression because it makes them dormant and stupid and breathe oxygen and they don't even know with an IQ. So they normalise what was smile yesterday non-stop and go through the same revolving door of twist and paper tooth. okay, to normalise what was moral yesterday. And that's why no one's got any real morals anymore and can't feel the truth anymore, because they come to every conclusion with reasoning, which is nefarious, because it's 5 cents in negative fields. That's why it's nefarious. The age of nefarious is reasoning. It's a known fact. It's in the oldest Bibles in the world. They're removed in all the Western Bibles, just like everything else are removed. So you'd follow Noah and the naked drunks. Noah and the naked drunks took away your universal language, so you couldn't live to be more than 120, put you into confusion, frustration, delusion, and paranoia with nations and cults and New Age cults, right, and religious political behaviour. That was their style, the milestone of Nimrod. And that's what the whole Western civilization is all about. They live by the law of Jandi from the Nordic father nation of the Western European colonisation, the tribe of Dan. Okay, that's these white civilizations from the Nordic father nations. All right, they're originally called the Anunnakis, blonde hair, blue eyes. Okay, Hitler's plan was to do an ethnic cull, because they always do an ethnic cull. That's what Harari's plan is, to do an ethnic cull, and that's what they're doing right now. An ethnic cull. And putting the 24th chromosome in dormancy in every Westerner, so their body cells can corrupt, collusion, and treasoning upon themselves, right, from the minute they go to school in a 7-year cycle of life. By the time they're 14, their sacred excretion's dead, and they're going to death spiral and controlled by the voice of mind that tells them to do that, into a personality with mentality. So they're trapped with mental disorders and defects and die prematurely from stress-related disease by the time they're 80, getting younger all the time, declared by FDA and the whole human civilization, in the top empires in the whole world and top scholars across the planet. Generation X lives in their mind and their consciousness. Generation Z is IQ robots. And Generation Alpha is AI, artificial intelligence. And now the new generation of 77% of all their kids is now born with defective genes so bad they have chronic diseases and riddled with parasites hereditary from their parents who live in denial. Since 2003 declared in denial. They're just personalities. They have no mental telepathy in ESP, no remote viewing, no deja vu. They can't predict the future. They can't see the picture that tells them 1,000-word dimensional thinking. They haven't got multiple obsessions. They haven't got multiple perceptions. They've only got one narrative. They live in their own little narrative, in their own little comfort zone, and think they're special with their opinions, trapped with their own opinions and trapped into themselves so bad, the only thing they care about is themselves. The whole world's so negative now with self-centered egotistical behaviour, they don't even know what they're doing anymore. We created the most powerful truth serum in the world in 1994 and brought people back in the primal state and brought down the highest dead time and minds and men's in 30 years. The course of the Royal Commission, the Stoltenberg generation, the biggest military research and DNA studies where they found our DNA can preserve. In 2008, we preserved DNA, all right, in a time where time-sensitive life preserves with longevity and can repair 24 hours a day. So they said, declared in 2008 that I was the first cab of the rank that brought the cure of the human condition to humanity in the biggest study we've done in prison. So I came from the cave of prison with the truth of masses, with fire coming out of my mouth in raggedy clothes, like a thief in the night, with a shining armour, with the truth, right? And that's declared in the oldest Bible that I will come from the cave of prison with the truth of masses. And I'll be standing as the biggest outlaw in the world like Christ was, and going against the whole goddamn system. I have a genetic memory, and I want you to listen to me. Christ learned life after life and reincarnation traps. Okay? He woke up from amnesia at 24 years old with a crossover and discovered who he was. He said, I'm son of David, son of Abraham. That's why he says it'll be like the days of Noah, like the days of Lot, the days of Abraham. He knows shit you don't know. And I went for a transformation in my life, so dramatic you have no idea where I woke up from amnesia at the age of 51 years old through a 3.5-year transformation and discovered the most powerful confirmation on earth. I'm poor mortal being number one with the most divine intervention that brought someone back to life like my wife. In 1992, Kirsty Nash in Ipswich Hospital, in one of the most powerful, or the most powerful miracle on earth, she was given 0% chance of living after being narcaned and brought to hospital with a drug overdose. And when she flatlined, in that moment, in hospital under CCTV with 7 peer reports, with 7 doctors and nurses, given 0% chance of being, they were pumping her stomach frantically to try and save her life after she flatlined the first time with narcaned. In that moment when she flatlined, I went into myself and I said, Father, if you exist, God, if you exist, If you really exist, take anything away from me, but don't take her away from me. Do not take her away. Take anything off me. I don't care what you do. You can take anything away from me, but don't take her away. And boom, she lifted 8 inches off the bed from one end to the other and came back to life. They worked on her frantically because she was in danger. This didn't happen once or twice, it happened 3 times. She lives to tell the story and writes the most powerful poem in 2003, The One and Only. Worldwide #1 for 8 months. It's a powerful poem. She writes in that poem, I have power to take her life away and give it back. Okay? And it kind of scared me when I heard about this poem. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know. I was seeing the miracle, but I had no idea that this had anything to do with me at all. I thought it was just a miracle that was mind-blowing. But I didn't believe it had something to do with me. But in an investigation, right, in the top scholars, in an interview, they wanted to know because it was the biggest miracle they've got anywhere in the world, especially on CCTV. When they asked her, she said, I'm the one who brought her back to life. I'm the one that brought her back to life. That's what she said. What's astonishing about this is I'm about to give you the toughest testimony that I've ever had to deliver. When I went to jail, she was the love of my life at the time. She was a genuine soulmate. I made a powerful video before about a soulmate relationship and what I come to learn. When I went to jail, I lost every single thing. I'd given away $72 million recorded of court, right, in 2004. I was the only one telling the truth in a money laundering case, and the cops and politicians were corrupted in this case. And I was telling the truth and gave away 90% of my money, over $72 million. To people around me, family, loved ones and friends, and they all absconded me and left me posted when I was in jail. I learned who my friends were and they all disappeared. I lost every single thing I got and I was going through misery. I was pacing the yard for 18 months, 10 hours a day, and I had to walk around Australia for 18 months doing my head in, right? Dwelling on guilt, moral and shame. More than I ever had before in history. Going deep in jail in a time where time stands still like preserves, where nothing happens, a concrete jungle, where everybody lives by the vineyard illegally because they have to, okay, equally. Same 3 meals a day, same clothes, no systems. And natural selection takes place over 7 years, a cycle of life. And you find freedom in prison in 7 years, you cannot find outside from mental institutionalization. The same as 0 to 7. You go back to the same as 0 to 7 and think instinctively again, and not mentally. Okay, they found the most authentic details in prison from people going to jail for 7 years or more. They preserve DNA after a cycle of life, which means they go clockwise from being anti-clockwise. They go to school to be anti-clockwise in their biology, in their DNA, and 7 years a cycle of life in prison, natural selection takes place, and you live, right, by the quantum mechanics of a relationship, only with loyalty, honor, respect, morals, inspiration, encouragement. Nothing else works in there because it's a family environment, like father, like son. It's a family unit because it has to be. You're living with your worst enemies, and you have to learn to love them like your best friends, like your neighbor, right? So you learn to love your enemies as much as your neighbors. You learn to do things that are written in the Bible for a reason in prison. It's a natural environment where natural selection takes place, and you go back to thinking instinctively the same as 0 to 7. And therefore, your biology in the DNA proves we preserve DNA, and our aura goes clockwise. So we go clockwise in a time where time stands still, light preserves, while the rest of the world's outside is going flat out into nowhere, but they're in extinction. And all die prematurely from stress-related diseases because their body cells corrupt during the daytime, and that's every single thing they suffer from. We found the cure of the human condition with a drug, bread and manna, that Christ and Moses used. And it went the biggest study ever done in DNA. And I want you to listen to me. No matter what I did, I brought down the highest dead time haircut, Canley and Vines and Messians in 30 years that caused the Royal Commission. I brought everything down with my drug on every testing centre across Australia. And they found DNA studies, right, through drugs in people coming into prison from all over Australia. In DNA studies done that had taken this drug. in the biggest mental health research in DNA. And when they discovered that we went back into primal state and used 100% of their brain with our genetic memory, it's astonishing what the outcome really was and what stage people were onto through a transformation, because it's a transformation. It takes time to go right back to your primordial state clockwise until you can do a Christ can and more in every single apostle in genetic memory. It takes time for a natural process, a transformation. That's why the World Transformation with the book Freedom is called World Transformation in DNA with genetic memory, a genetic process with the ancestral tools. The book Freedom, hailed by Jeremy Givers, or written by Jeremy Givers, is hailed by 16,000 top scholars of the world, the holy realm of life, right, to go back to our natural selection and do everything Christ can and more with When I Breathe and Breathing Him, the holy breath of life. These are the two most powerful influences on your reality to cross over and go back in your primal state with the things that we teach here to resurrect humanity. But I want to tell you about something I've never told anyone before in my life. I can give myself credit for what I've done because everybody else steals credit. I can't trust one person to tell the truth about me because nobody does. Not one human being on earth from any system will tell the truth about me. Not one. But every document's there to back it up with the biggest scholar reports, the biggest think tank, and the biggest DNA study. And I've had a 6.5-hour meeting with the top scholars in the world. There's 50 meters of documents about me. And I've been on mainstream media 17 times and the front page of the papers. I want you to listen to me carefully. I am one of a kind in the world that can do everything Christ can and more with the most powerful confirmation on earth. And Kirstine Ashley is not the only one I brought back to life. There are others. And also done investigations on this. But I need you to please listen to what I have to say. When I went to jail, Kirstine was 18 years old with a child 6 months old. I just made a powerful video about her life when she moved to Brisbane at 18 with a kid. And the kid had ADHD, right? She had a hard life. She was raped by her dad. That's why she committed suicide. And I didn't know at the time. I went through hell. And I changed her life so much that she came right out of a cave and I gave her the life she never dreamed about. 2 months before I went to jail, she was in tears, right? And she had more gratitude than anyone ever did in my life because I changed her whole life and saved her after she tried to commit suicide 3 different times. And each one of those times was so critical, only a miracle could have saved her in all 3 occasions. This is before the time I had with her. Mine was the 3rd one that I experienced with her. And she sat down and cried, and we were sitting at home with $2 million on the table in a beautiful day, and we're just sitting back, okay, and had a great life. And she had a great life and came right out of a shell and made a lot of really good close friends, and she was in tears like she never had been before. And for the first time, she expressed everything to me about what she really went through and suffered from and how grateful she was that I brought her right out of this and mended everything in her life that went wrong. And she never dreamed about it. She thought she would have been dead by now. And she's looking at her life and thinking, wow, she couldn't believe it, right? And she was in tears. And I'll tell you, it was one hell of a moment. She was the love of my life. She was my absolute soulmate. And what's the funny thing is I go to jail 2 months later, right? And we go through complicated issues and we lose everything. And she's put in a very bad predicament. And we have a 3.5-year-old daughter, 18-month-old son. And my last son was born 10 days after I went to prison. I went in the 17th of January 2001. He was born the 27th. The next 5 months, my wife went into a death spiral, right? She went into willfully dying in depression, went downhill. By the 5th month, she was in hospital on a drip, unconscious. I had a special phone call in jail from a psychiatrist, and this was really difficult to stomach. He said she was dying and willfully dying. He said, look, Kim, he said, we've done soulmate, right, investigations for 45 years. And I was called in on this particular job because I've experienced with soulmate relations where one person dies, the other one wills themselves to death, And there's nothing we can do to save these people. We've tried everything in a study for 45 years, but they're very rare cases. But a genuine soulmate is two people that are completely inseparable. It could be a mother and a daughter. It could be two friends. It's not necessarily sexual, but they're inseparable. And when one dies, the other one willfully dies within 12 months. And he said, it's extremely rare cases because barely no soulmate relationships actually really exist. But Kim, this is one of them. The problem here is, Kim, you're not dead. These cases, people die and their partner willfully dies, and we cannot stop or prevent them from dying. We've tried everything known in the book, but we can't. It's so unexplainable that we cannot work this one out. We call it the soulmate relationship because we always work out their partner or that soulmate, two pillars of salt. A soulmate relationship, two pillars of salt, inseparable, 24 hours a day. They'll have a woman that gets married, right, has kids, but she will live with her mum forever. And they are inseparable, and the husband actually puts up with it. Very rare cases, but just to give you an idea. So my wife is in hospital on a drip, going into a death spiral, and he's explaining this to me. And it blows my mind away what I'm being told. But he's an expert, one of the top experts involved in this. And he knew what he's talking about, and it made a lot of sense from stories that I knew myself, right, and people that I knew. Because I have seen soulmates, and I have seen this, and I've heard these stories before. They weren't brand new. It's a Romeo and Juliet story, and that's a bit different, right, where she kills herself. Okay, but it's the same thing. It's always been the Romeo and Juliet story. Soulmates, the two pillars of salts. And I'm in jail. I do 10 years jail. I can talk about these videos all day long, but you know, when you lose your family and you have to separate from your wife, and you have a critical interview with a psychiatrist that you must, right, put it in her mind that you're not interested in her, and you must talk to her, and they're going to allow special phone calls, right, and get her awake, okay? She's in an induced coma because she's dying on a drip, and they're going to wake her up and make me talk to her, right, and convince her to leave, get on with her life, but I'm not dead. Right? I'm not dead because I'm not dead. She's hanging on to me. And she's got to let go because she has to save the kids. There are 4 kids involved. And she's a good mother, but right now she's ill and she's going into a death spiral and willfully dying. So I have to get involved in this in the most stressful time of my life, 5 months into my jail, losing everything I got, losing family, friends, losing everything, and pacing up and down the yard, stressed to the shit house with many court cases to come. That's only just begun. And then I've got to deal with this, right, first. And it becomes the most critical issue all of a sudden. Through this process, I forget about all materialistic things. I don't care about them. I don't care about money, nothing. I just forget all about it. All of a sudden, it's just all about her and my kids, the most. To be honest, my kids, the absolute most. And I can never express this because I tell you why. You go through hell for 10 years and you dwell on this every day, what's happening here. And, you know, we ended up having to separate, right, forcefully, right, to save her life and to save the kids. In late 2003, I'm in communication with her again, right? We literally get back together because she would rather stay home alone after playing the field and being honest about it. For a couple of years, she slept with a few guys and she learned something. She'd rather wait for me than sleep with someone else. Hey, right? And she got her head straight. And I was being transferred to Northern Territory and going to get out of prison early because there was no SVO, which means I only serve half time. And by this time, in Alice Springs, without violence and serious offences, right, you get work release and home D very early. So she set up and got very smart. She was in Alice Springs and moved home, right, staying in a flat out there. And she set up, right, with the minister to have me transferred over there to a family so I get out of jail early. And this is not a joke. She really put the tools together. And I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind away. But we got back together. And then the police wanted to keep me in Queensland and charged me for money laundering and to also stop my book they knew about. I made a lot of videos about this. 66 court orders to stop my book, to expose what they were doing with the Martin Bryan buyback plan, because we were on the front page of the paper on the 8th of January 2001 when we got busted, and we had the shipping container fully loaded with guns, with all the guns that Disarm Australia in big black writing. The guns that Disarm Australia never serial number checked out. We had the guns, we had the signs, we reversed Hitler's plan, right? We had all the documents, we had the most powerful conclusion, right? We hacked the hub, we exposed our mind control, and that's why Dealey and Hassan got locked up in England for exposing all the documents that we had when we hacked the hub and exposed what they were doing with mind control, right, in the New World Order in 230, right? Mind control under the conscious singularity. It's a mind control under conscious singularity by WF, and we exposed them what they were doing worldwide, what the Freemasons were doing back then with mind control, because methamphetamine is a mind control weapon. Graphene oxide, iodine crystal, in the vaccination, as Harari says, it's an electronic magnetic device and it's on every patent. And we're going to remember COVID-19 as a time we went under the skin with surveillance. You know, I told you about this. Methamphetamine was the first construction of graphene oxide and drug delivery system in drugs and food preservatives, the same electronic magnetic device on every patent, right, for 300 years by the Rockefellers, right? The Rockefellers set up conscious singularity, okay, into the mind with the education, right, into the conscious singularity, so you're dumb and stupid and think you're intelligent at the same time, and you have amnesia, trapped in a reincarnation trap and keep coming back, and they're not. They're masterminds of their own vessel, right, and they're not trapped with amnesia in a reincarnation trap, but they can't use their sixth sense, but they'll do everything to rob you because they're credit thieves. That's why the conscious singularity is a credit thief, because Westerns are credit thieves and liars. Hollywood characters, American dreamers, spin shit all day, talk about themselves, only care about themselves, and possessed with their own opinions. And that's how they write all their books, Smart Education with every mental disorder and every gene defect, and they're all lies. As declared worldwide, it's only their low-life opinions to sell their primer anti-clockwise, and they're all anti-clockwise. They're not clockwise. They haven't got deja vu to predict the future, prevent what's going to happen. They haven't got deja vu. They haven't got mental telepathy, ESP, remote viewing, telekinesis. They can't master their mind as a mathematical genius and mastermind is 100% of their brain. They can only 7% to 10% in over 95.7%, in over 98.7%, sorry. The rest can only use up to 15%, trapped inside their mind, trapped in a personality with mentality, no matter what they say. They have to cross over, right? They have to resurrect and cross back over the primal state to use 100% of the brain, as you can see in the movie Limitless. We can do it with a drug. We've already proven that on every testing centre across Australia. We can do it with a drug, which means the mind doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. None of your scholars are telling you this. None of your religious political behaviour or New Age or any Christians telling you this. You know why? Because they don't fucking know. That's why. They don't know what they're doing in their mind. That's why they all keep coming back in the reincarnation trap, and they all die prematurely from stress-related diseases. We have 500 years old here with a perfect order, a perfect DNA in a time where time stands still ever serves. We have 257-year-old right masterminds, right, with birth certificates, off the grid, away from witness. And any person that crosses over has to get away from witness. A known fact. Shiller masterminds, monks and Buddhas, how Christ learned to mastermind by Shiller masterminds to use the third eye and the sixth sense. You always have to stay away from the public, because otherwise they'll destroy you with the mentality and their reptilian mentality, because they cannot do these things, right? You cannot harness the power and have divine power and divine instruments around Westerners. They don't have any. They wouldn't have a clue what they're talking about. They're all artificial human beings worldwide in 98.7% anti-clockwise, right? And they're riddled with parasites, and they've got no aura, only 3.5 hours a night. So they're just personalities trapped in their mentality, no matter what comes out of their mouth. They can say what they like. They're living in a 5 sense world, and they come to their own conclusion with reasoning by design to be a competitive person. They haven't got a care factor. They lost between 95 and 99% of their feelings. That's why they can't feel the truth, because you can feel the truth with deja vu. You can see that with third eye kids on YouTube. Third eye children, superhumans, perfect from 0 to 7. By it, they can read, draw, and write blindfolded like Bruce Lee can when he masters mind and finds 12 people karate, blindfolded and respond 7 times faster than a thing in their conscious mind, in their conscious singularity, in their mentality, in their critical thinking, because you respond 7 times faster than a thing blindfolded. And a kid can read, draw, and write blindfolded by the time they're 8 with their sixth sense, so they can see outside the mind, okay, and use their influence from outside the mind at 8 years old. And you can see in that YouTube video, by the time they're 12, they can predict the next car coming around the corner of colour it is, so they don't get run over by it and backstabbed, right, by the whole goddamn system. And then at 12 years old, they can predict who's ringing on the phone, what they're wearing the other end, with deja vu and remote viewing all the way across the planet, because they have a codependent relation with the intuitive codependent power. Like George Clooney, when they were steering a ghost, he can feel his mate in Iraq halfway across the planet. So you have deja vu and you have codependent power. My wife was sick one day in Alice Springs, okay, back in 1997 when she was on holiday out there. I rang up at 8 o'clock in the morning and said, hey, what's wrong? I've got a bad gut feeling. She said, I just threw up in the toilet. How did you know? I could feel it in my stomach. Codependent feelings, 3,300 kilometres away. So don't tell me it doesn't work, because I damn well know it does. It's not the first time and it ain't the last. I go to jail, I do my head in, I got to break up with my wife deliberately, right, to save my kids. So I go through this for over 2 years without seeing her until this happens. Then when this happens, the cops charge me so I can't be transported into Northern Territory. So they block me. They charge me for money laundering, right, for $72 million, and I win the court case. They just did it to stop me and stop my book out of jealous and spiteful behaviour. They put my wife and kids on witness protection against their will, so we lost contact completely. Imagine going through this. You read the Witness Protection Act. You know it's deliberately set up, and it has nothing to do with anything else, because she got back with you when you're already in prison. And it says under the Witness Protection Act, must be a dangerous arising situation deemed to exist with evidence. And every 12 months, there's a review process where such a dangerous arising situation must be deemed to continue to exist with continuing evidence. So I challenged them. After a lot of corrupt cases and the money laundering case being very corrupted, I challenged them witness protection because they never took her off. Even though I win the case, they don't take her off. Everything was corrupted to the shithouse. And I made a lot of videos about this. But here I'm going through the worst corruption. I can't see my own kids who go through family court and the police is there trying to block me. Yet the affidavit submitted, the judge got attention because when I tried to contact my kids through family courts, my own wife wrote the affidavit that I was a perfect father and couldn't ask for a better father. And I was always a good husband. And he couldn't understand why she's in witness protection. So he swings in my favour immediately. Then the cops step in and order my kids to be subject to psychiatry and not to see me because I'm deadly and dangerous. Deadly and dangerous. And I didn't want my kids subject to psychiatrists to know their own father and go through that kind of process to be drilled by a psychiatrist. It's disgusting, filthy, low-life behaviour. So I pulled the pin because I didn't want my kids to be subject. I thought more about my kids than myself. I did not want them subject to psychiatry and then to listen to me on the phone with a psychiatrist. But that's what the cops were trying to induce or force. You know, they knew I'd pull out of this. This was disgusting, filthy, reptilian mentality from the cops and absolute corruption at the worst. Disgusting animals. So I challenged the witness protection case because then they tried to unlawfully deport me with a ministerial decision that cannot appeal. And I knew they were using the witness protection case and I knew it was corrupted. So I challenged the witness protection case in jail, right, on January 2009. So Chief Justice Jersey, the biggest judge on the bench of 7 top judges in every state, he sits on the bench because an article goes in the paper. I send the outline of submission into the paper. And they put an article in the paper that 3,550 witness protection cases was in serious jeopardy with my case. So Chief Justice Jersey sat on the bench, the biggest judge in Queensland and number 1 judge in the Parliament misconduct bench out of 7 top judges. He sits on the bench and they close the court. I go in there and challenge them on evidence, and they can't provide any. And the judge swings in my favour. And then the commissioner walks in from the shadow governments. The ones that arrested me when my arresting officers took my side and dragged out of court, when he goes in my favour and says there's no evidence in my second mention, they drag him out of court and take over the case, the shadow governments. And he said he's the only one that knows me, and they didn't have the evidence. And that's proven in 2004 in a Supreme Court examination for money laundering, because I went into jail on unexplained income, and here it is, explained. So I should have got out, because that's what they held me on. Everything was corrupted. Then, through this case, Chief Justice Jersey, he gets attention because he realises how much corruption is going on, and he's being ordered by the Minister of the Shadow Government from the Australian Crime Commission, right? He walks into the courtroom and said, Joanna, with all due respect, I know you're going to favour this guy, but Australia's on witness protection from Kim, and we're using his wife and kids as leverage, and it's under the national security, which overrides your act, Your Honour. So with all due respect, whatever decision you make, we're going to override your decision. Australia's on witness protection under the National Security Act, and we're using his wife and kids as leverage. That was the most disgusting verdict I've ever heard in my life. And this is from the Commission of the Australian Crime Commission, from the shadow government that walks in, right, and overrides Chief Justice Jersey, their biggest judge on the Parliamentary Crime and Misconduct Bench. 7 top judges in Australia, and he's the leader. I have to file for a Parliamentary Crime and Misconduct Inquiry for this hearing. And that's what they tell me. I must file here, and I can't be in the court. It'll be heard behind closed doors, and I'm not allowed in there. And I have to file for it. It's the only avenue left. So I quit the case knowingly that they're using my wife and kids as the leverage, and they had already moved them around the country in 4 different locations, uprooted them and moved them, right, in uncomfortable zones. They couldn't have any real close friends. They weren't allowed to have animals. They said, do not keep animals, as you're subject to move at any time. They put them through hell, and I didn't even know. In 2010, I got out of jail, and the 2 most corrupt cases was declared by Chief Justice Jersey, the money laundering case and the witness protection case, and it was acquitted. It was acquitted. When you come out of jail and you go through a life like this, the people you love the most, your family loved ones when they're gone, the ones that you gave the money away to, they turn on you. They turn on you completely when you come out of jail. Oh, you're a criminal. They were living off your money, man. Now you're a criminal. Now you're a lowlife. Now you're a failure, right? And you know you're a failure. You know the most powerful thing that you fail is your family and your kids. And your kids, you carry that burden every day of all 10 years. You never, ever, ever, ever can lock that away, not your kids. No matter what you go through in your life, no matter how much you cope in life, no matter what you've done, there's one burden and one guilt that carries with you forever. No matter how good I did what, no matter how good or bad or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If there's one thing I know, it's the guilt of what I put my children through. Because I'm responsible for every single thing, regardless of who's right and wrong and what happens. No matter how evil it is, no matter how corrupt it is, I'm responsible. I went to jail. I let them down. I caused them havoc beyond the mind. I wrecked my wife's life. I wrecked my children's life completely. And there's a lot more to talk about here. There's a lot more. When she was taken off witness protection, I was on the phone with her every day for 2 months. She changed. And the chance of us ever getting back together, I don't think it was even a thought, because things were so dramatically changed with what they've gone through. What they had endured But when this was declared to be corruption, the government owes me over $30 million for damages. That's a fact. The whole thing was corrupted, right? For their advance, right? For no fucking reason in the world. No fucking good reason whatsoever. Chief Justice Jersey kicked him off witness protection, right? And ordered Peter Dutton, right, who was a Minister of Federal Police under the shadow governments, he ordered him to step down. Made a lot of reasons about this, okay? The two most corrupt cases in Australian history, right, put in every university by Chief Justice Jersey. The two most corrupt cases. And amongst these cases, there are 4 other cases that are corrupted adjoint to these cases. Regardless, I carry the burden and the guilt. And when I come outside and I find out what my kids have gone through and what they go through the next 10 years, and I do mean what they consistently go through to this very day and how much it comes back on me. When I was in detention in 2015 and 16, 2 of my kids were on the phone with me nearly every day. My daughter, okay, Christine, and my son, Brandon. They wanted to come and live with me. And you know, what killed them and really killed all of us was being deported. And you have no idea, after letting them down for 10 years, after going through so much hell, they still love me, man. They still wanted me in their life. They wanted to come and live with me because of the hell I went through. Seriously, right? This is a long story, but I'm telling you now, this made you feel worse than ever when I was being deported, right? And it caused havoc like you wouldn't believe. And my kids turned on me so bad because I hurt them that much. My oldest son, Craig, you know, Marin spoke to Craig. He came here to visit me, what, a year and a half ago? And you know, the damage done to my kids and how much they blame me, because they blame me. Their whole life was screwed because of me. And it still affects them to this day. And my family and friends always turn on me. The ones that looked after me, they always call me a bad father, and I fail, and I fail, and I fail. And my brothers turn on me non-stop because I fail with my kids. And they use it against me all the time. You can never, ever, ever live without this guilt and burden. Even, I don't need them to punish me, but they do. They rub it into me all the time as much as they can. But without them rubbing it into me, I can tell you right now, my biggest burden in the world and my biggest guilt factor and what hurts me the most on a daily basis to this very day is my kids. And nothing's going to change that. No matter who says what, or whether they rub my nose in or not, nothing can change the burden and guilt that I carry to this day, no matter what I've done. And I'll tell you something. If there's one thing I've come to learn, is that God wanted me to feel it. He said, son, it isn't your fault. It's a circumstantial problems that happen in life because of what you did. You did everything for me. I put you through the path I needed to go through with all these things, but you had to sacrifice, son, just like I did. And I made you sacrifice. Your kids aren't dead, but it hurts a lot more to be rejected constantly. And when you have 5 kids rejecting and your family turning in all the time, you're suffering a lot more than I ever did, son. I'm putting you for more suffering than what I went through myself. And I want you to suffer. I want you to feel what the world's really all about. Because it's what I feel, Kim. It's what I feel. And you're feeling everything I feel, that you fail all your children because they don't care about you. They care too much about themselves. And that's how I feel, Kim. I love each and every person in the whole world as if they are the only one, but they don't give a fuck about me and they reject me. And son, you carry that burden. You carry the guilt of the whole planet on your shoulder because you're the only one. And you know that. You are the only one, Kim, that carries the burden of the whole world on your shoulder. Nobody else carries that burden and that guilt. I wanted you, Kim, to feel exactly what I feel, because you feel me. I'm in you, and you know. And that's why you live with that burden and that guilt that I live with. That I live with in the time that we're in.